History at High Noon. This is our last one for the year, and it's going to be a little hodgepodge, a lot of little things, and a lot of gossip, and a lot of things. It's going to be a lot of fun. I will tell you right now, if you have any ideas for a topic for next year, please let me know. I've already lined up one person, and it will help me get ready for next year if y'all come up with some bright ideas, okay? I'm always supposed to tell everybody that I'm Carol Morgan. I'm president of the Historical Society. I forgot that, Johnny. I'm sorry. On the benches and on the tables, you're going to find 2 sheets of paper. This is a project we've been working on for several years. The one sheet that's all hodgepodge and not lined up neat are all the businesses we're doing research on. When they started, where they moved, who ran them, who did all this kind of stuff. We're doing it, a guy that used to be in charge of downtown development said, nobody's done this. Well, the chamber tried to do it in '79 and it fell through. So we are trying to let you know that where Tip Top used to be was a car dealership. Where the Fernbank is now used to be a bicycle repair shop. Those kind of things. I think that is so much fun to know. We talked about one time some things that happened in Coffee County at the city commissioner's office and all this kind of stuff. In the 30s, there was a house of ill repute in Douglas. And all the women in Douglas gathered up and descended on City Hall. And so they made the ladies leave. But nobody has told me where that building is. So that's one of my little things to worry about. I want to know where it was and who owned it. See, that's what I want to know. But things like that, it's a good barometer. And Lane Bailey is one that said he loves it. He's got pictures up in his place. You can see what the bicycle shop looked like. So if you ever go in there and want to look at a picture. The other list is a list of businesses and when they were established. We have documented those years. We can't get to the months. If you remember, the courthouse burned. A lot of records were lost. Some were inconsistent. So we've done as good as we can do to prove it was there at that time. I tell you this because next year one of our projects is going to be stories about these businesses. Daniel's Feed and Seed used to be where the old warehouse is right around the railroad track. And Daddy used to go there for fertilizer and seed and all this kind of stuff. But my favorite thing was they had a monkey in a cage. And I would torment my little sister. When we'd walk in the door, I'd say, that's probably your sister, because we got you up here at this store. And Joanne was so hairy when she was little. I mean, she had a big strip of hair down her back, and it was just thick. And she'd squall and squall, and Dad said, what's wrong with Joanne? I said, I don't know. Those are the kind of stories I want about these businesses. Like Belk Hudson. Miss Darwin was on the 3rd floor. Anybody remember Miss Darwin on the 3rd floor of Belk's? She'd get your clothes for you, and she'd say, Carol, that's a little too short for you. I mean, there's things like that. And I remember working at Mason's after they had a fire sale. So we took everything down from the attic and put it on sale like it was brand new. And it was just funny stories like that. That's what we want to collect. The people and the stories, and that's what history's all about to start with. So that's your homework. Think about any person that stood out for you, in a store. I remember going to the fashion shop, and you try on a bathing suit, and the lady will do like this with a curtain and watch you change clothes. Because they were so afraid, I guess you were going to steal it. Just stuff like that. But to do that nowadays and see what happened to you. But anyway, those are the kind of things we're looking at for next year. We're really going to do a push on businesses, their history, the people, and the stories, as the Historical Society is. Today, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I like the ugly better usually. First, I'm going to talk about some programs that we had that I thought were exemplary. Some people said, why didn't you get Mr. Trowell to speak? He was a fountain of information. But as for someone who had him in high school once and college twice, hearing somebody talk like this for 2 hours is not much fun. There's no inflection, there's no excitement. It was just, so that's why I never got Mr. Trowell to speak. Loved him to death, and he's the one that taught me into this job. So, except for that, he was a wonderful person. 2 of my favorite programs, and one we didn't videotape at this time, was Johnny Morrison talking about the book Blind Obedience. Have y'all heard that? His family and another family had a feud going. It started in Coffee County, and this family would move, and this one would follow him. This one would move, this one would follow him. And it came out to a bloody massacre. But he was just so knowledgeable about it, and it was such an interesting time period. My other favorite one was Pong Holton. If you did not hear Pong's, go back to our Facebook page and listen to it. He told you the good, the bad, the ugly of living in Thailand and getting out of Thailand. It will make you cry, I promise you. It is wonderful. 2 of my favorite people, we did this as a interview program before we did History at High Noon. We did a little show, and they put it on Channel 13 and whatever Douglas had. And 2 of my favorite people were Mary Clyde Scott and Lyle Lott. Lyle Lott, and I've told this story before, when we did the little history of West Green, he said he played ball with Babe Ruth. And I said, yeah, okay. And he said we were playing at the railroad depot, and the train stopped, and he got off, and he played ball with us. I said, well, that's good. So before I put anything out like that, I check it. Go to the old Douglas Enterprise, and you'll read the little article where Babe Ruth played with the boys at West Green baseball while the train was stopped. I never questioned Lyle Lott ever again, ever. And Mary Clyde Scott, she's one that, well, she told me the first time we talked for a long period of time, she said, if you and I had been the same age at the same time, we'd own this town. So she knew more than anybody I have ever seen, and she remembered it right up to 100 years of age. She is a treasure to us. And I am so glad we taped those interviews we did. Well, you did those for us, didn't you, Johnny? We taped every interview we have of her. And one day I'm going to have just a Mary Clyde day because she is so interesting. Another thing about Mary Clyde is the Methodist Church was getting ready to get rid of the Boy Scout building. And somebody said something on Facebook, and I said, that's where the first handicapped school was. Mary Clyde Scott taught there. The parents had to bring them in wheelchairs, walkers, and some had to carry. Catherine Fryer was in charge of the program from the board office. She'd bring them milk and a sandwich every day at lunch because there was no school lunch furnished for them. And that's where they had taught handicapped kids for 3 years. So I went and took pictures in case somebody wanted to tear it down. But I mean, it's just those kind of stories that we need to compile and keep because somebody will want to know one time. Now here comes the bad. I made 2 big mistakes in the last 14 years. Now I got to tell you about a good one though. Now I got to tell you about this good one. Oscar Patton. He came and spoke about his books. Now, I knew Oscar when he taught at South Georgia College, and he hung out at the end zone. And if you don't remember the end zone, I'm so sorry. But I knew Oscar that way. I did not know him as a writer until I picked up a book. But his writing process and his thoughts are amazing. You can read this book, and in nowhere does it say the Slater family. But by God, you know it is. When he talks about the sheriff, you know who he is. If you've lived in Coffee County 20 years, you know these people. That's what I loved about it. And he was just so easygoing and just answered questions. He's good. Yeah. He was really good. Now then, the bad. I'll get to the bad. I was headed out on vacation, and this lady from Ambrose called me. Well, she was born in Ambrose. And she said, I wrote the Ambrose history, and I'd like to talk with y'all about it at your program. I said, you would? She said, yes. I said, well, that'll be fine. If you bring some books, we'll buy some. She said, okay. She lived in South Carolina. Joanne Waters, I left Joanne Waters in charge because I don't know where I was, but I wasn't here. And she came in with this book. This is a children's book about her mother's life in Ambrose on the farm. I screwed up royally. It was the worst. No, it wasn't the worst. It's the next to worst program we've ever done. I was so embarrassed, but not as bad as I was. This year, Mr. Wilkerson gave me a name to invite to come talk to us. Said she knows all about Rat Row. First, she was 15 minutes late. Second of all, she talked about Rat Row for 2 minutes. Then she talked about the segregation problems in Coffee County. Not only was I embarrassed, I was trembling. I was so mad. So mad. So she won't ever come back. If she knows the only information on the topic in Coffee County, she ain't coming back. So that was my worst and my best. Now then, let me hear from y'all. Was there one that stood out in your mind? Come on now, some of y'all been here a long time. Don't be faking it now.
Well, the same one that you thought was the lost, your mother also thinks the same thing. Because you could ask her a question. She would not answer the question. She'd tell you something else about segregation.
Was she a politician?
No.
No, she wasn't, Charles, but let me tell you. I was like my daughter. I was getting a little agitated before she finally shut her mouth because I was about to say something to her that I shouldn't. But in Coffee County, we have gone way above what she believes with integration. And her talk was more like, well, I never saw integration the way she saw it. I'll put it that way. But it's like that we have been against her all of her life. And God knows that most of us in here are Christians. And we don't look at everybody by the color of their skin. But I'm so glad Carol will never have her back here.
I won't.
It could have been an interesting subject, though.
Well, now let me tell you something. This is a project that I am really proud of. I didn't intend for this project to take off like it did. In 2016, we realized that all of the people in charge of areas in Coffee County were dead or dying. During the time that integration was going on, the school integration, the sheriff, all those kind of people, they were all gone. I asked Daddy questions before he died because he was chairman of the board. And I mentioned it to Tom, Jim, and Cat Ford. And Cat Ford don't let a dead dog lie. We did about 3,000 interviews of people in Coffee County during that time period. We interviewed them. She got this people behind us. We have a computer program, a Facebook page, a web page. We've got all this. And then last year, we did a 3-day workshop, a Saturday a month, January, February, March, and then had a big to-do at the Martin Theater in April. And people came, and they said, we didn't know this was going on. We won 2 national awards and a state award because of that project. Now, only one teacher in Coffee County is using that in her classroom, but the schools all over North Georgia can tell you about integration in Coffee County, Georgia, because they use it in their history classes. So that is why we did it, because it was a generation lost. And what we found was, first of all, if you were not here at that time, you don't know, but everybody said we don't want integration, we don't want to lose our neighborhood school. Well, the only group that lost their neighborhood school was Carver. At the same time, urban renewal came through and took all their businesses away. They bought that property. So we didn't lose anything. That group of people did. And it was, and the thing about the interviews we did, nobody was mad, nobody was angry. Everybody just wanted you to tell how they felt. They wanted to tell you how they felt. And Jerome Loving, I'm going to forget somebody's name, Larry McElhaney, and who was the other one? Joe Pope. The 3 Musketeers. I was in the room when they did their interview, and I had hope like this to keep from laughing, because they had never played basketball with shoes that weren't taped at the toe. They never had a uniform that fit. They never had a textbook that had all the pages or a cover. And see, I didn't know any of that. And I said, really? And they said, yes. So it was just got everybody with better understanding. And that's one of the best things I think the Historical Society has ever done or ever will do, because it won't be forgotten. Clayton Methodist will be remembered. Joe Ray will be remembered. All those other board members. And we'll always remember the governor that rode backwards on the bicycle. The highlights. Another thing we've done, and this is, and I'm not trying to brag, I just want you to know what we do. Bagley's Auto Parts, remember the junkyard out there on 32? His daughter gave us, the Historical Society, the land where that cemetery is. We've cleaned it up, we've planted trees and shrubbery and all this before they all blew back down. And we had to go in and support the headstones because they were caved in and all this kind of stuff. And Henry Milholland, bless his heart, has been a joy to me. He goes by and picks up and cleans up and does all this stuff. He's wonderful. But as long as the Historical Society is in existence, we manage that cemetery. So when I said to somebody, I said, I'm not going to be at this museum every day. The only reason this Historical Society will exist is because of that cemetery. Because I saw what the city of Douglas did to it before we got it. So it's going to be there forever. I may be 99 and in a wheelchair out there, but it'll still be going. Anybody got a favorite or one they didn't like?
I had a favorite, and that was Oscar Street.
Oh, I love that one. I love that one. He told us about the mill quarters, and he's got me a map. He drew a map of all the streets and the buildings, and then he had it taken to an architect. It's in the archives. It's never going to be forgotten. I had forgotten about Oscar.
I thoroughly enjoyed it because I knew nothing
About that area?
about that, nothing at all. Because I didn't come here until 79. I was old then, but, I'm real old now. But I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That was a good one.
Is that when you talked about that neighborhood this side?
Yes, right across from the wiregrass. Go back and look at it. If you haven't seen it, go back and look at it. Because he was really good, really good. Anybody else got a favorite or one they didn't care so much for?
I liked Frankie Snow, too.
I had forgotten Frankie. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, Lee. Yeah.
I really enjoyed Jim's presentation about streets in Douglas.
Yes.
Turned out I live on some historically named streets. Kind of puny looking now, but they represent some sort of big historical
Right.
events. and not growing up here, I went out to find my streets. And goodness, some of them have just fizzled right up to nothing.
Right.
But at one time, they must have been fairly
Fairly.
distinct thoroughfares. I really enjoyed that program.
I did too. Jim does a meticulous job. He is just so spot on. So, anybody else? Yeah,
I enjoyed the one we had on nursing.
on nursing?
Profession.
Yeah,
That brought back, a lot of history.
yeah.
And the growth and the progress. That was a good one.
I like the one you did on Mary Clyde Scott, and you just did one installment of it.
Oh, yeah. She's gonna be front center in February.
Now, let me know, because I'll miss her for that. She's my aunt
Yes, yes.
on the Tanner side.
She's,
She wrote a big old book, this thick on the family.
yeah. Yep, yep.
I said, how long
And I tried to find, I called the company that published the book, because I get people wanting to buy a copy of that book all the time. And they told me, she said, well, to set it up, if you have the file, to set it up will be $1,000, and the book will now cost $100 a copy. And I thought, but I called Carol, her daughter Carol, and I said, does she have the book? And she said, what book? I said, the Tanner book. Oh, yeah, she's got one. Do you need to borrow? I said, no, I need the file. She doesn't have the file. She don't know where it is. So I have the one for the Gaskin Avenue book because Mary Clyde, as the chairman of whatever that committee, gave me everything on computer for that book. So if I ever get money, I can reprint those books. But my favorite time with Mary Clyde was when we, say for example, we're talking about the Dent house. And she said, well, there was a man that used to visit her. And see, that is my favorite part of history. I don't care about December 7th, 1941. I want to know what you were doing that night. So, that's I like that kind of history. It makes it personal. I found out stories about Catherine Thompson. I found out just all kinds of things like that. How many had geometry under Miss Thompson in Coffee High? I could write a book. One day I might do that. Well, it may be a pamphlet, but just things like that. It's just, what? That's what she did.
She was trying that weight on the table.
She had 2 metal weights, just like that. And when you took a test, the girls wore dresses in. We couldn't wear pants to school. She'd go around and check your hems. If you had on a sweater, you had to take it off or roll the sleeves up and let her check for answers. I didn't know enough geometry to make an answer. If Joanne hadn't made tablecloths and napkins in different shapes and all, I'd have flunked geometry. So, see, and this is what I want to do about the schools.
Question, so you can
No.
make bad grades.
The only thing I did well, I could memorize. Pythagorean theorem, I made a 98. That's the only A I made that whole year. I don't even think I made a B, but I made an A on that. Stand up there like this and recite it. So another thing we're doing is with the schools. We have a lot of history on schools, and I told one time I did a thing on education, and I said in the 1920s there was a school within 3 miles of every child in Coffee County. 3 miles. Now, I want to tell you something. Coffee County's a big county. And back then, it included Atkinson. So that's a lot of schools. But I have found the floor plans in our archives of East Side and West Side Elementary School. I have got the plans they did first for the Coffee High that was built in 1954. What I'd like to do is get stories about those schools to add to it. Margie Smith Osment lives in Alaska now. She's from Huffer, Georgia. But she sent me a little, about this thick, spiral notebook with stories about going to West Green and then going to a country girl coming to Douglas. It was a culture shock for me coming to Coffee High School. I had 28 in my 8th grade class, never heard the word algebra, and was in Algebra 1 the first day. And everybody just looking around, you know, and I didn't know anybody in my classes because you had them from everywhere. It was just like this. But those kind of stories in the senior garden, if you were not a senior and you stepped foot in that senior garden, you were literally picked up and thrown out. So, I mean, just those kind of stories. The kids now at the high school, they'd laugh at you. They'd laugh at you. And one weekend, somebody put cardboard around the senior garden hut. And it had a light in the middle, and they put a red light bulb in there. And on the inside walls was Playboy cutouts. And Clayton Mathis came around the corner on D wing, and he stopped like this. And he turned around and looked. He said, "Barbara Surfers, Carol Morgan, get over here now." It wasn't us. It wasn't us. And it wasn't. It really wasn't that time. It was not us. But he crawled all over me and Barbara for doing that. I said, "Coach, we didn't do it." He said, "Do you promise?" I said, "I promise." He said, "If you're lying to me, I'm going to get you." I said, I ain't lying. I didn't do it." But it stayed up for about 2 hours. It was fun.
Find out who did it?
Well, I found out who did it later.
You played me to find out.
I never told him. I never told him. But those are the kind of stories. I mean, it's fun. It was such innocent fun compared to what they do now. And see, in the 60s, the one thing I am proudest of growing through that time period, nobody had an instant camera and nobody had a cell phone.
Amen.
I mean, you just didn't.
Yep.
And most of the time with your crowd, it was like it'd be years before things were mentioned outside your little group. And see, they don't have that anymore. Kids don't have that cohesiveness of a group. We had a pack.
Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat, whatever. One of my favorite things to do is when I tell real stories about people, how it really was about people. Somebody said, "Well, that's kind of like gossip." I said, "Yeah, but it's fun." I mean, I can't prove that he shot up his fireplace every night, but if Mary Clyde told me, I believe it. So those are the kind of stories that make history real, and that's what this is all about. It makes it personal. It makes you feel like you know these people. Anybody else got a favorite or an unfavorite?
Carol, I want to say that I have enjoyed every single program that I've been to.
Well, good.
Because I'm not from Coffee County originally, like Deidre said, and some of the things that I have heard, it's opened my eyes.
To be a movie too.
And so there's been something about every single program that I have enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was growing up, we learned history in school, and it was always the big picture. But with my granddaddy, with Papa Ray, it was, "Let me tell you about John Jones." And I'd say something about James Moore's daddy. He said, "Let me tell you about Mr. Cliff Moore." I mean, those kind of things. And that's what makes it personal. There was a story one time about cows going missing in Coffee County. And somebody said, "Well, just go to West Green. They're over there somewhere." Those kind of things. And it's interesting. And the Winters family in West Green, they came from Tennessee because they had to leave the state. They had to get out of town. And Miss Ruby told me that. This is Warren's mama. Yeah. But she said they had to leave because they was bad. And the law was after them and they had to leave. And she told me that years ago, and I still remember that because, you know, how bad did they have to do to leave the damn state? But then you start looking at people, and during a certain time period, how many left Georgia going to Texas? Wash Lott, that started West Green and all that, he had got run out of Coffee County in Georgia and went to Texas and came back with gold in his saddlebags. I don't know that he minded. I think he probably stole it. But those kind of stories are history. But you don't find those in the book. That's why history's so boring to kids. That's why it's so boring. My great-grandmother took a bunch of young'uns in a wooden wagon to the roundabout swamp in Pearson, and they had got lost and had to spend the night. That stuck with me when she told me that when I was like 10 or 11 years old. I thought it was an adventure. Spending the whole night in a swamp in the back of a wagon? Then I started thinking, no, that's stupid. That wasn't an adventure. That was dangerous. But those kind of things. And I have told repeatedly throughout the years, write your story down. Write your story down. Somebody's going to want to know it one day. I remember Clayton Methodist didn't like fried chicken. When we had fried chicken at school, he would not eat it. I said, what's wrong with it? He said, it's just not good. They say things like that. You tell Elizabeth, her daddy did not like fried chicken at the school. But just things like that. And we called, there was a coach, Wendell McGraw, big guy, bald-headed, and there used to be a cartoon on TV, and it was called Baby Huey. And we'd go by and we'd say, hey, Coach Huey. And he didn't know what we was talking about. He just laughed, thought it was so funny, and we was making fun of him. So, that's what I want you to do. I want you to do that. Anybody else got a good or bad or ugly? You can talk about me, I don't care. Nothing to say?
We'll get Joanne up here to talk about it.
Joanne has not, she's been up here and talked about several things.
Yeah, she just walked in.
Oh, she just walked in?
She's down the hill
In the back. But anyway,
Another thing I enjoyed, Carol, was when we went to the cemetery.
Yeah.
That was fun. We learned a lot there.
the walk through the cemeteries, we did those.
They were fun.
They were fun. They were either hot or drowning.
Raining.
And it was so funny. Every year we started to do one. I didn't ask them. I didn't ask Mel. I didn't ask Linda. I didn't ask Brenda Merchant. I didn't ask Jim Cottingham. I just walked up with 3 sheets of paper about a person. I said, this is who you're going to do on this day. Because I'm afraid they'd tell me no. So you just put it in their face. So there she is. You can talk about her now. I told them you had spoke at History at High Noon before. Is there anything? Yes.
I would like to thank Carol Morgan because supposedly she has a team, but it has really been her by herself this entire year, and I don't know how many years before I got here, and I would just like to say thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's been fun, but it's been a long 14 years. So, anybody else got a good one or a bad one or an ugly one? How many here is this your first time? I know 3 of you. Amy?
No, I've been here before.
Have you?
Yeah, before I started art.
Oh, okay.
I remember Oscar's talk.
Okay. Well, I'm glad y'all came.
It's been a while, though.
And we will start back in February. Please watch the Coffee County Georgia Facebook page, Historical Society. So that's where days gone by. I can't even think of the name of it now. That's where we'll post what we do and when. And feel free to look around. Feel free to stop and chat. But thank y'all for coming.